Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few items. First, I'd like to make a motion regarding the salary adjustments to make conferenceable the style of salary adjustment that the House has decided to use. So I'll make a small deletion. The motion will be to delete 1.6 million, including 1.5 million in SGF for the 1% salary adjustment for those more than 10% above market.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Owens. Questions or discussion? Senator Petty.
I know that the Senator, you said about making that change to make this comparable, I can't say the word anymore. But so that would impact the whole pay plan. Would that be correct? That we could talk with about that?
Senator Clays.
Yeah, I think the interpretation of the House rules would allow for discussion of the entirety of the pay plan. This is also an item that, you know, if we really just wanted to sit here and argue about it, the Department of Administration has indicated that they're not able to use a 1% step and that it would be very complicated for them to implement this anyway. So what better item to use as our conferenceable position than one that the administration is asking us not to include?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Other questions? You already went? Okay. Okay. Any other? Senator Hosher.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, please. Does that put the cap at the House position then? Is that what you indicated?
Senator Clays.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that the way that that operates, yes, the cap would still be the House position as far as the overall number, but how we operated within that number could be determined. So we would just be reducing the 1.5 million in SGF, and should we determine some other number under their larger number for the entirety of the pay plan needs to be distributed differently, we could do so.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Clays.
Okay. This one is in regards to lapsing FTEs. The House position on the funding for FTE vacancies would be different because I'm going to make a motion on lapsing the FTE funding. The way this would operate is if we give FTE funding for the entirety of a fiscal year, but that vacancy remains open during particular months, that funding would then lapse at the end of that fiscal year. So it would be after the fact, not at the front end, that we would be dealing with the dollars. Makes it a little more easy for those who are computing this. And I believe most agencies, well, many agencies operate this way. Some of them, however, we are aware will move those dollars into other things. This would just create a level of transparency by asking for those dollars to be lapsed at the end. When we go through our budget process, then we would, of course, be able to determine whether that lapse is given back to the agency for another use. I think a good example would be, you know, BIDS gets a certain amount of dollars for their attorneys. It's very difficult for them to hire attorneys, both in rural areas and at the price point in which they are offering. They might use those funds then for assigned counsel, which I believe all of us are fine with. But this would just change the accounting on that so that they are lapsing at the end and then determining that the assigned counsel needs to be a higher dollar amount. So when they're asking for their budget, they're not just asking for FTEs that become vacant and then fund another pot of money over here. So it's a transparency move. I think in conference we can come up with a more comprehensive way of addressing this, but that would give the Senate a position that is different than the House on how we deal with the vacancies in FTEs, and we can have a more comprehensive discussion.
Questions and discussion?
Need a second.
Oh, okay. Okay, we have a motion, second by Senator Petty. Questions or discussion? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I appreciate that example you gave of the bids. I know it seems like we heard from corrections as well that if someone got promoted, then that position was open. So in this, I mean, we'll have further discussion in conference, but in this scenario, that position would still be there. It wouldn't be lapsed.
Exactly. Yeah, we wouldn't be preventing them from hiring in those positions as they move forward.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll support this. I think it's a temporary small fix. I would say that this is a much more complicated issue that needs a deeper dive, and so I think this is a common sense, maybe step that everyone can live with. It's not going to cause unintentional harm to any agency, but I will say that I have every intention in government efficiency to take a deeper dive into this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions or comments? Second. Oh, yeah, Petty did. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and then I'll relinquish the mic for a little while. I have some technical amendments for the Board of Regents.
Wasn't it you? I think Renee had that one.
Oh,
She's got it.
you want to do it? Yeah, you want me to read all this? All right. Oh, boy.
I can let, if you want to, let's let, Senator Erickson, would you mind? That was your amendment. We just passed them out. So if you don't mind, would you want to do that one?
I'm happy whatever the chair prefers.
Yes, that's,
Did you have
I
other?
had you down for this one. So.
Oh, why, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Yes, these are some technical, what I would deem pretty much technical, but I will explain a little bit. I think you have a handout on this from the Board of Regents. And that first section, you'll see that says add the following new no limit funds. This is new money coming in that we need a mechanism to fund. So we're not adding any money, but this is coming in, federal funds and so forth. And they need the ability to fund so they can use these funds. Number 2 on page 2 is reappropriation language so that they can have those reappropriations. And then number 3 on the third page, I would say these are where the technical amendments come in. The first one there for Fort Hays State has already been done, and the rest are technical. So I know that's a very quick overview, but those are the different categories and just some cleanup to make this actually work with the language that's consistent with the House. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
You want to make your motion, please?
Yes, I move that we make these additions to the Kansas Board of Regents.
I have a motion, second by Senator Clays. Discussion? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to follow up, so in number 1, this all of this list under the Board of Regents those are federal funds, and this is just allowing a mechanism to be in legislation to be able to use the federal funds?
Senator Erickson.
For the most part, I would say not all of these are federal. For example, the University of Kansas last year was appropriated $25 million for a cancer center. Well, they need the mechanism, the fund to do that. We're not adding those funds, they were already added. So not all of these are federal funds, but you can see those that are, and then those that just need a funding mechanism to be able to use the funds that have already been appropriated.
Senator Petty.
And then under number 2, you said that these this appropriations are already in these budgets. And then could you elaborate again about number 2?
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, and I'm so sorry. The University of Kansas is actually in the reappropriation language. My mistake. Yes, I'm so sorry. Different category, but the reappropriation isn't. Yes, this is just allowing the reappropriations language for reappropriations.
And number 3.
Senator Petty.
Sorry, number 3, I'm looking at, I do see, so I'll just use Fort Hayes. There was appropriation of the $750,000 that was made in '24. This is just, is this a duplicate? Is this an addition following through with that project in '25? Or is it the same funds being carried over '25 because they weren't used in '24?
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe that one has been taken care of. It was a duplication, and that one has been taken care of.
So you're saying this first item doesn't belong here?
It's been disposed of.
So I chose the wrong one. Let's just look down at the 27th payroll adjustment. That is that just what it says as an adjustment? I mean, it's a small amount of money, but it's section 111.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, those are just, they've already been, you can see that the 8,223, it will be transferred to the Department of Administration. And like the previous one, the 8,223 has already been transferred to the Board of Regents. So it's just reconciling those payroll differences. There's no new funds there.
Senator Petty.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to conceptualize this. I believe that the reviser understands what we're doing here. So this motion is in relation to the rainy day fund or the budget stabilization fund for those reading the budget bill itself. This would cap the rainy day fund at $1.75 billion. It will authorize the state treasurer to invest those funds exceeding 50% of the $1.75 billion into capers. And it will take any interest earned above and beyond the $1.75 billion in principal and transfer to the state general fund. That's the motion.
I have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Owens seconds. Discussion. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senator, you said, and I might have heard it incorrectly, you said any amount above 50% of the rainy day fund?
Senator Clays.
Yeah, at or above 50%. So currently we invest 50% of the rainy day fund.
Okay.
And so the remainder is not invested, though it does earn interest. It's not invested as the rainy day fund portion above 50% or 50.00001. So that is just authorizing, instead of it being invested in what is essentially the same style of investments, PMIB, sort of that 4.8%, that it would allow him to place that into capers where it's earning 7+%. Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it would still remain as a part of the budget stabilization. It's just invested in a higher yield. Okay, that's what I presume, but I wanted to ask that question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Senator Clays.
Yeah, so related, this would, a separate proviso relating to the Budget Stabilization Fund, this would suspend the 2025 transfer to the Budget Stabilization Fund. And by way of explanation, in the previous, we capped it at 1.75. The interest should hit that number. So we will get there very soon, just based on the interest. A transfer will be unnecessary in 2025 to reach the 1.75 we just ended up at. So this will suspend that 2025 transfer and going forward. So 2025, 2026, 2027. And that's the motion, to suspend in 2025, 2026, 2027.
We have a motion, we have a second by Senator Peck. Been a long day. Any questions, Senator Petty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with that suspension, since it's not just for 2025, you said it's for it's 2025, 2026, 2027. If something catastrophic occurred and we had to use the rainy day fund before 2027, we wouldn't be making any transfers to that fund. So we would be depleting from it because now, would that be the case?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, the transfers to the fund are done at the end of the year when we decide that we've brought in more money. The receipts have exceeded the estimates. So that catastrophe would have to happen inside of a setup where we were somehow also exceeding receipts that would necessitate a transfer. So this just stops the transfer should there be those receipts going above and beyond. It is unlikely that a scenario exists where we would go above and beyond and yet also be spending out of the fund.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. I'm just somewhat cautious about the fact that if we suspend for 3 years, then we are setting up for future legislatures that it's not important to keep putting money into the rainy day fund. That was a question.
He'll answer in a minute. Senator Clays.
Yeah, superfluous little amendment I was making there. So it turns out that there's no language for a transfer in 26 and 27 anyway. So I will modify my amendment to cease the questioning on 26 and 27 by just limiting it to 2025's transfer.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do you have another one here?
No.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll start with Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have three. I'll start with the very first one and ask the revisers to hand out. The first one is we passed the proviso that allowed bonding authority based on certain circumstances for the KBI lab. After reviewing that or the not lab, but the KBI's new headquarters, after reviewing that with them, they found out from the revisers that they had to have specific language in that proviso to allow them to buy land if that is needed as part of that. So the proviso is very simple. It just adds, and I believe it's underlined, allows them to buy land if they need to. And I'll move that motion.
We have a motion second by Senator Clays. Discussion on the KBI amendment. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have the revisers hand out the next one regarding the judiciary. So on the House floor, there was a $500,000 proviso for fire equipment from Larned. And whoever the House member was that carried that felt that the judiciary's budget was the best way to pay for that fire equipment. And I happen to not think the judiciary's budget is the best way to pay for that fire equipment for Larned. If it's the will of the committee to budget that $500,000 in fire equipment, then I believe that it should go through SGF. And so this proviso simply restores the judiciary budget with that $500,000 that was taken out as a House proviso. And I move my motion.
I have a motion. We have a second? Second. Senator Clay seconds. Questions and discussion on moving the funding source for the Larned fire equipment? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senator, you're restoring the $500,000 to the judiciary budget. What about the fire equipment?
Senator Owens.
So by restoring it and doing this simply has it coming out of the SGF.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. So is that in your?
Yes, I'm sorry, they haven't handed, or did they hand that out?
No, they haven't.
Okay, they haven't handed out. Yes, all that it shows in the amendment is the restoration of the judiciary budget. Because as David so eloquently explained to me, the way that the transfer had to happen by restoring the budget for judiciary, it automatically then pulls that from SGF.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure I'm going to get that momentarily, and I did. I was just going to ask about the dollar amount that this will increase the judicial branch budget. It looks like it's, in round numbers, 500,000.
Senator Owens.
That is correct.
So it reduces,
Senator Peck.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it increases judicial branch budget by 500,000, reduces SGF balance by 500,000.
Senator Owens.
That would be correct because then the fire equipment would come from SGF and not from the judicial branch.
Senator Peck.
Mr. Chairman, well, I don't think that it should come from the judicial branch, but I'm not in favor of giving them an extra $500,000. So I think everybody knows how I'm going to vote.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Owens.
Okay, last one. I hope, if we're all lucky. So I put this on in front of everybody, and I made sure the revisers and everybody has a copy of this. So as you guys will recall, earlier in the day, we discussed the commerce budget. And when we reduced all items in the EDIF to zero, that sets the Senate position at zero, which means that those items that the Senate Commerce Committee wanted to increase above the House position for specific reasons, it actually lowered our position. And so simply put, what my request is that the items that you see highlighted here, you will see they are a higher number than the House Bill 2007. The $3 million, the 3M that I wrote next to the Sunflower Summer Program, was because it was an additional proviso in the Commerce Committee to raise that to a total of $3 million. We took out we let the Love Kansas marketing campaign lapse and moved that $2 million into the Sunflower Summer Program. And so my request is that we fund that with the EDIF fund so that we go in with a Senate position on those 4 items specifically. The rest will remain at zero, so they can be negotiated at some point lower, but we return those 4 items, spend from the EDIF fund so that we can stake the Senate's position. And I will stand for questions. Move my motion and stand for questions.
I have a motion. We have a second by Senator Clays. Questions and discussion. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding on the Sunflower Summer Program that there is the ability for entities that do not charge a fee to receive the money for someone who visits their museum, for instance, through the Sunflower Summer Program. Would you entertain a friendly proviso to that item that disallows an entity that does not charge a fee from receiving any of these dollars?
Yes.
I second his
Se-
friendly amendment.
Senator Owens, okay. Okay, any other questions or discussion? So Senator Clays, you want to? Okay, it's done. Okay, it's second. Any other questions or discussion? Senator Peck?
The Sunflower Summer Program, house position's $1 million. This bumps us up to $3 million.
Senator? Go ahead, I thought you was finished.
Well, I was just going to ask that question. And the Sunflower Summer Program, what exactly is it? Is it a function of government?
Senator Owens?
So the Sunflower Summer Program provides the opportunity for families to tour different sites, whether they be zoos, science technology centers, museums, things like that, throughout the summer using an app. It provides for free or discounted admittance for parents and children to be able to do that. There are limits and restrictions on that. We did fund this in 2025 for $3 million. It was quite successful, and if you haven't heard from your constituents, I'll send you some of mine, but it was quite successful in driving a tremendous amount of traffic into other counties from counties, and many of the organizations I found or that I talked to really felt that this was an incredibly beneficial tool to help, especially our children and our youth, really fall in love with Kansas and be able to experience Kansas in a way that they would not have otherwise been able to do so.
Senator Clays?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a fantastic program. You know, the federal government started funding this initially, and we did this for a couple of years now. My family used it a ton. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic, and places that I know I'd never been. My father took my nephews to pretty much every site that took this Sunflower Summer Program for admission in about a 200-mile radius. So it is a fantastic program. I think it definitely gave lots of people some insight into what's going on with Kansas and how many opportunities we have for recreation, et cetera. There's got to be an expiration date for this kind of stuff, though. It's great to get people out after COVID, kept them in, and I think that was a great intended purpose of this. Getting people excited about things that one can do in Kansas, again, super, super awesome. But we've got to figure out a way to sunset these programs and have them come to a conclusion one day. So I'll support the motion to do this, but you know, it just can't keep on keeping on here, guys, with you know, us just subsidizing everybody going to events and things like that. So that'll be my comment. Thank you.
Senator Peck, did you have some other questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So apparently, this is not means tested. Any millionaire that has a family can go to these programs, go to these locations, and have a discounted or free rate. So I'm in full agreement with what the vice chair just said. We've got to sunset these kind of programs. We can't just keep funding programs just because the federal government established something and it was kind of nice, and now it's on the state. And is it nice for people to have a discount or free admission into a lot of locations? Absolutely. I don't know that this provides free admission into any of our sporting events, but that would really be great if it did. If we could go watch soccer in Wichita or wherever we have a team, or minor league baseball, and I know that I'm getting way off track here, but the fact that it's not means tested, the fact that it's money that, it's a program that we hadn't had, and by the way, I have heard from a lot of constituents. But as this committee's been made aware, and my wife can tell you, my children can tell you, I know how to say no. And there comes a time when it's time to say no. And I do not know why we continue to fund this program, no matter how much benefit it has. Particularly, I think it would be frustrating to this committee, the fact that it's not means tested. We always hear about, well, we're doing things for multimillionaires. And we're doing stuff, this is for multimillionaires and the poor and everyone in between. So other than that, on this motion, I don't see anything that causes me heartburn. But $1 million is too much. 3 million is 3 times too much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions, comments? Senator Petty.
Well, I would just say that it's probably one of the things I've heard the most from constituents about as being a way for them to visit sites in our state of Kansas and spend their money in Kansas. They might be getting a free admission, but they're not getting free lunch. So if they're traveling, they're spending money in our communities. And it's also helping our, these sites in Kansas, it's helping keep them open, and they're not, they're in your communities. So that's another important piece of this as well. So I guess I don't see it in the same light. It's benefiting Kansans. It's educational. It's spending Kansas money in Kansas. It's keeping open public venues in Kansas. So far, I haven't been able to come up with a down piece.
Any other comments, Senator Owens?
Sure, Mr. Chair, and Senator, I do understand your point of view. I really do. What I would say is, taking a much more in-depth look at commerce, the budget, how this is spent, what all we're doing, and spending some time in the interim, along with many other agencies and budgets, I think would be a fantastic idea. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that line right below there, that Love Kansas marketing campaign that we funded, cost a little over $48,000 per family that was recruited to Kansas. We spent $48,000 recruiting, I forget how many families it was, to move to Kansas. And so I totally agree that is an absolutely terrible use of money. And so that's why, in my mind, moving it, eliminating it here, moving it up here to where we do have, even though it's not means tested, some very proven results on how this benefits families, which is just incredibly important. I mean, anyway, I could go on. I thank you, and I move my motion.
Any other questions or discussion? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, and while I have used this program with my grandchildren, and I know what a popular program it is, I have also had, and has not been brought up, I have had businesses in my district that would like to be part of this program and have been denied. And so I think if we're going to, and I also agree, what is our role? Where is our priority? Even though I think it's a great program, is this the role that we should have? But I would just say, if we're going to keep this program, I think there needs to be a look at, because some businesses have said, look, you're picking winners and losers. You're drawing people to these with free admission. I want to be part of this. I have a legitimate product, and it's hard for me to, when I go to bat and reach out and they say, well, we just don't deem that appropriate for this program. I think there needs to be some specific guidelines and not pick winners and losers inadvertently through the funding of a program such as this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to remind the committee that the reason we're revisiting these 4 items from the Department of Commerce is they were zeroed out, and their actual number was 0. The reason that we are here today reconsidering these is because if it's 0, that's the Senate's position. these four items were above the House position. When we eliminated all EDIF, our position would go to zero. It's not going to get back to what we'd agreed to, would be what the Commerce would like to see. So these four are the items that were in there, and like it's been mentioned, the Love Kansas program was it 2 million this year, went to zero, and we reapplied that to the Sunflower program. I'm just saying, Mr. Chairman, these are the ones that we'd like to reconsider.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Owens, were you finished? Okay, and Senator Erickson, was you done?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I have two.
Okay. Means I'm looking this way.
Thank you. The first one has to do with the Children's Cabinet.
Senator Erickson, would you like to explain?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you'll notice on the bottom of the first page there that the language in House Bill 2007, you'll see it inadvertently made the Kansas Children's Cabinet an agency, and that is not accurate. So the first language there corrects that and makes sure that it's not an agency. The rest of this is just clarifying and reorganization by moving sections. And you'll see that all the red strike out, those are just moving the sections to be organized in a way that conforms with 2007. The one that I had a question on is on the last page, and this was language. It looks like we are appropriating new money. We are not. That was moved from a previous section to this section, is my understanding. And so with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Make your motion.
Sorry, I move that we approve the Children's Cabinet
We
language.
have a motion. We have a second. Senator Holscher seconds, or questions and discussion on the adjustments on the language? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Erickson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have my final one is on the Kansas Lottery.
Senator Erickson, would you like to explain?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And you'll get the language and then also a chart that will be helpful in explaining the rationale for this. If you'll recall, back in September of 2022, we entered into a 5-year contract for sports wagering. And what this language does, you'll see on the chart, you'll see where Kansas ranks in terms of tax revenue per 1 million wagered since inception. You'll see that we are very near the bottom. And so we have learned that There are negotiations ongoing. As we speak, our contract does not expire until 2027. What this language does is make sure that we have a seat at the table to renegotiate better terms for the state in terms of maximizing our sports wagering revenue. So this just says that they cannot use any money out of this fund to enter into or renew a contract agreement until we make sure that the terms are agreeable for the best interest of the state. And I move my motion.
I have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Owen seconds. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Erickson, is that, okay? Did none on this, okay, we're gonna work this way now. Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I know, don't blame me. Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have several here. This has been quite the experience being the freshman on this committee. Even though we have some other senators that are new, at least you guys are on the House side. But anyhow, so I'd like to draw our attention to the green sheet, page 16, and making things conferenceable, if I get that word out right. Looks like everybody's had trouble with that tongue twister. Going to be dealing with FY 26, number 1, 2, and then on page 17, on the top 3. And if I can, I'd like to just make this into one motion that we're going to delete these 3 items and bring them to 0 so we can make these conferenceable.
Okay, and you said page 16 and which,
Number 1, 14.3.
okay, towards the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it'll be number 2, 10.5. And then on the next page at the top, number 3. And so
Okay.
I move my motion.
That's your motion. Do we have a second? Senator Fagg seconds. Questions and discussion? Senator Petty.
Can you provide me with some justification for, I mean, we've listened to this conversation earlier about our community colleges, but we also listened to the conversation about taking something down to 0 and the impact that it has. So I would like more than just making it comparable. So tell me the justification for taking away the funding for 2-year, for apprenticeships, for student success initiatives, and for tech colleges operating grants, other than just to make it comparable.
Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. If it's okay, I'm going to refer to Senator Fagg on this.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say that the answer to that is that when we look at our budget, we are way over. And this is one of these kind of things that are tough decisions, and this would be one in that area. So,
Senator Petty.
So our community, those colleges have already have a 4.2% below FY 25, and these cuts would put them 17% below, and then 23% below in 26. I wouldn't say, I mean, I think that's isn't a fair statement to say that we're looking for, reducing the budget when we're actually looking for our community colleges to bear a bigger brunt than anybody else. This you know, this doesn't even talk about the 1.5% cut or, the freezing on positions, unfilled positions. Yesterday I had, and I forgot to bring this with me, but I had the University of Kansas has a nursing office now, and they've done a study of nurses across the state of Kansas. Maybe, and you probably all got that booklet yesterday. But when you look at that map and where higher education is offered throughout our state of Kansas, if you go past Salina, the opportunities for education are, when it comes to nursing, are pretty much offered only by community colleges. So that's another piece of how we are cutting off parts of our state to access to higher education programs or to the ability to have those programs. And our community colleges and tech schools are meeting that demand for apprenticeships, for certification in high demand areas. So I'm just asking, I don't see how this, if you want to look for a different number, that might be one thing, but putting 0 is probably going a little too far.
Other questions? Okay, Senator Owens.
Sorry, not trying to cut in line. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is this money, is this brand new money on top of money that exists? Because I know the green sheet is monies added in House Bill 2007. So is there already money, and this is, for example, in number 1, an additional 14.3 million on top of money that exists in a fund? Or is this just the entire amount for those items?
Senator Clues or Fag? Senator Fag.
So this is funds that they had prior to, and it was making them whole compared to what the House is. We're just trying to get into a position to where the House is the high side, and we'll negotiate something between there. So it's not new money. It's just trying to maintain what they had before. And I agree with everything Senator Petty says. We can be very proud of our colleges and all the stuff in how you sit down with these numbers. That's kind of where it's coming in at, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Senator Hosher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you did cut in line. This concerns me in the respect that it doesn't seem to be a good look when we're taking these budgets down to 0, and despite the fact that, the House has a number in there. These community colleges, which a lot of them are in more rural areas, they train our technical workforce. It's the workforce in these areas that serve a vast part of Kansas. So again, I think this is a bad look to take these numbers down to 0 heading into conference, and doing it to have a conferenceable position. Our position should be funding these schools because they're important to our communities and they're important to our state. So I won't be supporting this.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Mr. Chairman, we already have a position in conference that's different from the House, so this is going to conference. We are, if you remember, the senator from Butler made a motion that we go $1 below the House, so we were conferenceable. So this doesn't do anything as far as being conferenceable. A question, I know that this deletes the money that the House added back in. How much money does it leave? Because the House, my understanding, was getting close to making them whole for the previous year. How much funding does this leave for the two-year college apprenticeships, the two-year college student success initiative, and then the Tech Colleges operating grant, which is two-year colleges.
We'll get a number for you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not known as someone that stands up and fights for spending money, but we keep picking on our community colleges. This is the third time we have gone around as it relates to our community colleges. The answer needs to be verified, and I've got that. So I will say what I think, and what may or may not be verified is accurate. This would be zero funding for these particular parts of the Board of Regents for our two-year colleges. Again, we have a different position than the House. We shall see in conference if this goes on. I'm going to oppose it, and well, I'm not going to say anything additional about what I might do in the future, but I was hoping to support the budget this year. And these type of cuts really make it challenging. I'm definitely going to oppose this motion. I have supported zeroing out funding on some things, but this is one I just cannot do. Senate District 15 has 4 community colleges. We've got 19 across the state. Very beneficial in our rural areas for rural students to be able to go to our community colleges, get an associate's degree. I could go on and on and on, but I don't think anything I say or anyone else says is going to change anyone's mind. So with that, I've made my position. I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions or discussion? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is the same discussion we had last week. It's the same discussion that we're having, and apparently the rules and what we were supposed to do as a committee were not adhered to. I thought we were supposed to go out and find a budget, a Senate position for the budget, and bring that back to this committee, Ways and Means, and tell them, each one of us were assigned, I was assigned Commerce, Senator Peck was Ag, and so on. We were going down across. We brought back to this position, to this committee, a position for each one of these agencies. And now this type of activity that goes on so we can get into conference and have a better position. We didn't need to have our committees do any work then, if that's the case. And apparently the discussion on affiliations failed from last week because this type of activity that we have here. And I'm going to be with Senator Peck on this and oppose this. So thank you.
Other questions and discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? No. Motion fails. Senator, somebody else have one over there? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I've got a stack of them. No, I don't. I just wanted to maybe loosen it up a little bit in here. The Senate has passed Senate Bill 36, which is funding for conservation districts. That money is within the Department of Agriculture, and then the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, thanks to the chair, had cut the funding in that arena. So we are a little short of the money to match the conservation districts, which every county in this state has a conservation district. So I'm going to make a motion I'm going to make a motion. What's that word?
So add.
What he said. $1.75 million state water plan fund to the Conservation District 8 account and within the Department of Agriculture. And I apologize for doing this to the committee, but that is in form of a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Peterson seconds. Questions or discussion? Senator Petty.
Thank you. And could you say that number again? Sorry, I didn't get it down.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill has, in Senate Bill, well, the number that we need to add is did I use that word? 1.75 million.
And I know you referred to a bill. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm not on ag or utilities at all, but so is this money coming from the water fund or is this money being added? I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow that when you said for the conservation. I very much support the money for the conservation districts. I'm just not sure if this is an additional or if this is coming from someplace else.
Senator Peck.
Mr. Chairman, this would make certain that the money to fund Senate Bill 36 is there. It comes from the State Water Plan Fund that passed, I think it passed the Senate unanimously. If not, it was overwhelming when it passed. And it is a match, it's a program that matches currently because of a proviso last year, the match is $1 for $1. Senate Bill 36 puts it in statute, $2 for $1. In other words, every $1 of local match, the state will kick in $2 for a maximum of $50,000 per county or per district.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee might remember that I had pointed out how in the Capitol we have space that is used by the press, and the Department of Administration is only charging $100 rent for that space, which is $8.33. I have an amendment that's it is being handed out. This space is on the garden level. It is Office 37E. There are 6 offices, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 offices. It's being utilized currently by the Associated Press. However, Capitol Report has 2 offices, Kansas City Star, Kansas Public Radio, Topeka Capital Journal, and KSNT, which I'm going to guess is a television station. And they are utilizing space in the Kansas Capitol and not paying any type of rent. At least I would consider $100 no type of rent. I did ask staff to provide me with some information. Most of our office spaces at the Department of Administration, they charge $23.55 per square foot per year, which in round numbers would be $2 per square foot per month. So this language that you have in front of you, you will see allows these media entities the privilege of paying $1, which is half of the amount that we could go with, per square foot, and it's for non-state entities that lease or are assigned office space in the state capitol building. For example, the Associated Press has 266 square feet. So this would allow the Associated Press to pay the Department of Administration $266 a month rent, which is, I think, still a bargain. And then we could go on down. Hoover Capital is 311 square feet. Kansas City Star is 261 square feet. Kansas Public Radio, 154 square feet. That's the lowest square footage, along with KSNT. So they would only be paying $154 a month rent for office space in the Capitol. We pay for janitorial services as a part of our staff that cleans our offices, cleans their offices, and then the Capitol Journal, it has 195 square feet. I could go on long, but I'm not going to because it's late. My main thing is just to make certain that the Department of Administration understands that the legislature says, hey, don't give away office space in the Capitol to non-state entities. Let's charge them a little bit of rent. And so this wouldn't be $1 per square foot. And with that, I'll move my motion. Be glad to answer questions.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Clays? Questions or discussion? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, could the carrier tell me, is this different from what's done in other states? In terms of there's been free space for the AP?
Could I get you to repeat that question? I somehow missed the very first two or three words.
Is your proposal, is that in line with what's done in other states? My understanding is we are not the only state that gives free space to the AP.
Mr. Chairman, I do not know what other states do as it relates to providing free space for the media.
Senator Holscher.
Okay. So, yeah, it is my understanding that, like I said, we are not the only state that has been doing this, either prorated or free space in their capital spaces. Is there a reason other than just wanting to ensure that they're paying rent?
Senator Peck.
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand why we would allow anyone, I don't care who it is, President Trump to come into the Capitol and have office space without paying rent. So it has nothing to do with anything except for the fact these are non-government entities that are having space. We have space. We're elected legislators. Our staff has space. They work for the legislature. So that's my whole thinking. I just was shocked. And when I have mentioned this, Mr. Chairman, in forums back home, mouths drop. It doesn't seem to matter what philosophical, political philosophy they adhere to. It's like, really? You let the press have office space for $100 a year? So I thought, well, I'll try to do something about it.
I think I'd Senator Petty next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senator Peck, did you have any idea how long we've been allowing press to have space in the Capitol?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, absolutely. Too long.
Senator Petty.
I do not know the year. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but
Well, I probably have the privilege of having been here a long time ago when I was in the House, before anybody else on this committee was here. And at that time, it was before the Capitol was renovated. They had space, and it was under the staircase on the first floor. So I know that that's where they were located then. I asked for some information after you brought this up. And once with the remodeling, then they were allowed some space on the garden level of our Capitol. So I'm, for a lot of people, I mean, I guess it's how you feel about information getting out to citizens. This is whether it's KSNT or the Topeka Capital Journal or whether it's the Havers, it's a way of getting information out about what's going on here at the Capitol when we're in session. So in a lot of ways, they provide a service for us to let people know what's happening. This seems to be a way to look at reducing that access by saying they have to pay more. I don't think it hurts us. I only watch Topeka television when I'm when we're in session because I stay here during, which probably maybe some of you do too. But I always learn more about what's going on in the Capitol when I'm here in Topeka than I'm ever home in Kansas City because it's not followed as closely, but it certainly does provide information. So I think that information is important, and just like you said, you shared that, I might get a different reaction if I shared it at a town meeting in my community, but that's always who the audience is, but they still want information, and we don't have to be the only source.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One concern that I have with this would be, are there any other non-state entities that lease space or have space in the Capitol that were charging a reduced rate or no rate?
Senator Peck.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not aware of any that, and I've sort of tried not aggressively to get an answer to that question. Maybe I'll have.
Peg and Cluse are done. I'm not sure on Peg. I don't know. Larry's got any more. He had one, but I don't think Peterson. Well, he had some earlier. I don't know. I think JR's got a couple more.
Well, maybe not one. I'd be disappointed if we weren't closing out. There's one.
one I won't like.
There's one. But it's all this conference position. So innocent. Got my little halo up here. Thanks for that. Yeah, right. My daughter.
Senator Peck.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment is designed to make certain if it is a non-state, and I'm going to use the word non-governmental entity that wants to have space in the Capitol that would be considered their space, to pay a rent of $1 per foot. By the way, this does not drive the press, or it does not keep the press from being in the Capitol and writing whatever they want. They can sit in the benches in the hallway and write whatever they want to write. It has nothing to do with anything other than, if you are not a government agency, I don't think you should have free space in the state capitol.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
I just want to make certain, so earlier, today you said free space. I thought there was $100 a year.
Senator Peck.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is correct. It's not free. It's $8.33 a month for 1,600 square feet.
Thank you.
Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm guessing you're probably aware over the past several years, 10 to 20 years, newspapers and other publications have really been struggling in terms of revenue. So it concerns me that at a time when so many of our newspapers have, especially newspapers in small towns, have had to fold up, and others, even right here close by in larger areas, are struggling. So it does strike me that now at that time when we have so many publications that are struggling, that we would be charging them a higher rent. And my guess is, and it's more than a guess, the press is an important part of reporting on democracy and bringing things to light. So coverage of what we do is important to our democracy. It's important to keeping citizens informed. And again, because of that, and because of the need to have them here, plus the fact that financially so many of them are struggling, to me, this is not a good look for us to adopt, so I will not be supporting.
Other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. Senator Peck, one more?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You say I can have one more. Well, I'll take it. I don't know what I'll do, but no, I do have one more.
I thought you did. You kind of put your finger in the air, so. Senator Peck.
We've got a program that I think is a great program. I just think the funding is coming from the wrong place. And what I'm referring to is JAG-K. JAG-K works in our schools, and you can look at their annual report, which is very interesting, and they do a great job. So this is nothing against JAG-K, but the current budget, as I see it, has $5.4 million going to JAG-K from the Department of Children and Families, and $5.5 million from the Department of Corrections. So did I contact you about a balloon? If I didn't, I intended to. Okay, it's pretty simple to follow, and it would simply say that JAG-K's funding we would reinstate or restore $5.4 million to the Department of Children and Families, $5.5 million to the Department of Corrections, and JAG-K would be funded through the Department of Education, since they are an education entity and they are working in and with our schools. Again, not trying to do anything to the program, just shift the funding from one location to another. Same amount of funding.
Second, is that your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir.
Second by Senator Clays. Discussion. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that those were, both pieces of funding would come from the Department of Education, which would then restore, if you will, the Department of Corrections and DCF, or wherever that other one's coming from. Is that correct?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that is my intent, that the $10.9 million to fund JAG-K would come from the Department of Education versus these other two entities, agencies.
Thank you.
Senator Petty.
So, JAG-K has now embedded themselves within our public school system, but they brought their program and they started with their funding through the Department of Children and Families. They asked for evidence money to come to their program from the evidence space so that they could expand their program within our schools. The school districts themselves do invest money in this program already. So then this is going to be a double tap, and I'm not sure that we'll see the same number of schools participating with this change in the funding. If you follow JAG-K, one of the, they use the fact that they are helping with those that are most in need. So they're dealing, that's why the Department of Children and Families started it, or partly, and then through grant funding. And then with the evidence-based funding, they actually didn't come through the committee that made those decisions for that evidence-based funding. They came through the legislature to direct that funding for them because they maintain that this is helping to keep those students potentially out of our, out of any kind of contact with the courts, where originally that evidence-based funding was supposed to be for kids that were already involved with the courts. So I think this is, if we really want to look at that approach, we should look at it holistically and not make a change off the cuff here through the budget process without really looking at whether this is a good move or not.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was there a question I need to answer?
I don't know. I just wondered if you wanted to respond. Other questions? Senator Frag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this count towards the Gannon law, if you move it over to education?
Senator Peck.
I'm not an attorney. I don't know the answer to that question. It's been more and more evident that there's a lot of money in the state of Kansas that's going to educate Kansas children, and JAG-K does a great job in helping. That's not being counted as education funding. So this wouldn't change anything as far as amount of money we gave to education. It would just allow education dollars to be utilized for educating Kansas children.
Other questions? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, and if you said this and I missed it, my apologies. But this is not existing resources. This would be SGF covering.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would come from, we would not appropriate any additional dollars to the Kansas Department of Education. $6 billion is a lot of money, and we're asking for $10 million to be funded to fund the JAG-K program. For schools that participate, I think they, at least the ones that I'm aware of, probably would be willing to help fund. So this would, again, it would be State Department of Education funds.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
Your local school districts already are funding. They're using local dollars as part of the funding for this program. So that's already local dollars. So they would be making, there would be a decision in the future. I would just remind this body that earlier today, you did not support funding those items that have been continually when it comes to mentor teachers and parents as teachers, transportation that have been in the education budget. You did not support that at the point of 10.6 million in 25 dollars already expended, safe and secure schools, and in 26 to the tune of 16 million. So you didn't support the programs that are already in place that are helping that are helping to provide a more quality educating force and education for our students. And now you're wanting to shift to pull an additional amount of money out of our K-12 funding. So this is an additional amount of money that you're pulling out, because now we've said we like this program. I'm not saying this program's bad. I'm just saying that it came to us to get to first starting with a grant program and then expanding into the evidence-based funding. And now, you know, you could be working on the demise of JAG.
Other questions? Seeing none? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. Senator Peck, do you have any more?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pardon me for laughing. Sometime, and I'm going to say it now so I don't forget, I do have a bill introduction probably at the end of the meeting, unless you want it now.
No, I don't, and I think you may have to wait till Monday. Okay. Senator Alley, do you have any more? Senator Peterson? Senator Cluse?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I have 3 more.
Huh.
So hopefully we can buzz through these. And
Senator Cluse, go ahead.
thank you. Hopefully we can get through these real quick and get across the finish line. Maybe I'll even get a yes out of my colleague here. The first one, Department of Treasurer here, if we can get that amendment out, and it is
Senator Cluse, go ahead.
thank you. You know, Mr. Chairman, every community competes for talented people and to relocate in their area. And this particular grant is a $3 million ask from ARPA interest. It'll be administered through the State Treasurer's Office. And basically what it seeks to do is just that, try to incentivize, get families, individuals to our state, and the grant is a 80-20, so to be a state 80%, 20 local match to bring some skin in the game. And it's performance-based, and what I mean by that is it's limited to $250,000, so other communities can participate. And half of it comes up front, and then after they've seen some performance, the rest would come later, the other half. And hopefully this would be something that our communities can use to attract jobs, workforce people to Kansas. And with that, I move my amendment.
You want to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I did.
Okay, do we have a second? Senator Clay seconds. Discussion? Senator Petty.
Senator, has this program had a hearing in some committee?
No, it hasn't that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Senator Petty, are you finished?
Yes, I was made aware this, this has not been discussed in any committee yet. It's not in a bill. It seems like it might be something to bring forward in a bill next year for us to consider, but I don't see why we would be adding $3 million for a program when we've been saying that we want to be more fiscally conservative in other areas.
Other questions? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was heard over in House Appropriations, and I believe it is in the House's trailer bill that they created, if I'm not mistaken. So it's over on the House side in another form.
Other questions or discussion? Senator Petty.
That would be even more reason for us not to have a position.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Senator Cluse, did you have another one you said?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And this one, Department of Commerce, and it is a one-time ask, and if we can get that amendment out.
If you want to explain it.
Thank you there, Mr. Chairman. Yes, again, something to spur economic activity. It's just a one-time ask for ARPA interest money. And basically what this will allow, many of you know we have across the state a few areas that convention centers that need some rehabilitation, particular one close to our location. And there's another one in the state that I'm aware of. But basically, it's something that the community will still have to compete for to get, but in hopes to draw people from outside the state, having a good facility. It's a one-time ask of $6 million. And with that, I move my amendment.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Peterson seconds. Discussion. Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this seems to be a addition to this now American Rescue Plan State Relief Fund. Would this be correct?
Senator Cluse.
Yes, interest on the ARPA funds.
Senator Petty.
Okay. It's just so I understand, Senator, this funding is coming from ARPA, but is that, okay, I'm reading this last line. State fiscal relief, federal fund of the Governor's Department of the American Rescue Plan State Relief, federal fund of the Department of Commerce. So I'm sorry, I'm not following how that's, are those, is that another name for ARPA interest?
Yes. Senator Cluse.
I know what he said, but I'm.
Mr. Chairman, it's the interest.
Senator Cluse.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, it's the interest that's being accrued, and then it would be used, transferred over to Commerce, and then it would be used.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. So thanks for getting this clarification. So the interest from the ARPA funds that we still have that have already been committed, but that we still have, that interest is going back into the ARPA funds so that they can be used. And you're directing now with this second amendment here, or proviso here, to have 6 million of that can be then available through the Department of Commerce. Is this correct? For either a resort or a convention center?
Yeah.
Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for construction or rehabilitation.
And
Senator
this,
Petty.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be available for grants starting in 26.
Senator Cluse.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, missed that question.
Is it for 26?
Yeah, it's actually starting July 1 of 25.
Senator Petty.
26 fund. And there would be a process that we put in place through the Department of Commerce.
Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. Again, it's a one-time ask.
Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it says resort or convention center, construction, or rehabilitation. So it would allow for a resort to be built in Kansas. Could this resort, would there be any restrictions on the resort? Could it be a golf course with a hotel?
Senator Cluse.
Probably not for $6 million.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm not talking about the amount of money, but so new construction, as far as it would go, through the Department of Commerce, $6 million, or a convention center. Is there any requirement for local match?
Senator Cluse.
Not on this particular one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not on this particular one. Okay. So we must have another one coming. But, okay, this is $6 million of money spent on something that I don't believe is a function of state government, Mr. Chairman. So guess what? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was this in 2007 House Bill?
Senator Cluse.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Alley.
Thank you. Did this request come through the Department of Commerce and/or the Commerce Committee?
Senator Cluse.
No, again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is all a bit fuzzy, and I also just kind of want, so I won't be supporting, and so I just also want to go on the record that I'm in agreement with Senator Peck. Yeah, I know.
Any other,
It's happened more than once, really.
any more discussion or questions? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so Senator Peck doesn't feel so lonely, I will be joining him in opposing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I think it failed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more, and this has a little less money, and this has to do with the Kansas Highway Patrol.
Okay, you want to explain it? Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has to do with the Kansas Highway Patrol Training Center, and we had, the Senate deleted the 1 million out of the ARPA interest that was originally there to help in the repairs, the much-needed repairs, and I'd say that again, the much-needed repairs on a particular project there.
You want to make your motion?
Yep, and I will make the motion.
Have a motion. Do we have a second? Don't see any seconds. Oh, Senator Peterson, seconds. Questions? Senator Peck.
Mr. Chairman, so my first question would be, this says, it's a little unusual, it says not less than $1 million. So is $1 million going to cover the request for the repairs at the Salina facility?
You want to talk to? Oh. Senator Cluse.
That was my understanding. This is what the agency requested.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The language is a little strange again, not less than. So in other words, we have to, if they only needed 950,000, we still have to give them $1 million. And I figure they can probably utilize it, but I'm struggling with this one because I support and really believe that a function of state government is to provide for law enforcement, and Kansas Highway Patrol is law enforcement, but it is $1 million that we're going to say we have to spend. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions or discussion? Senator Petty.
Could the senator, I was looking through, if you could direct us on the green pages, what Kansas Highway Patrol and what, I know that there was a number of requests that they had, but what this specifically would go for.
Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 23, item 1, 2025, is where the one-time repairs of the facility of the Salina Training Academy. You know, I don't recollect what it was. I remember looking, there was a study put out, and I cannot remember off the top of my head on that one.
Senator Cluse.
Chairman, thank you. It's for 2 collapsed stairwells and then a collapsed cap, I guess concrete work that needs to be done. And it's real liability right now in its current condition, is my understanding.
Other questions? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to make a substitute motion on this to draw the funds from the State Highway Fund. The Kansas Highway Patrol is funded via the State Highway Fund, and we have already spent through the ARPA interest account. So if we are going to fund this, I would suggest that we do so through the source that funds the Kansas Highway Patrol. We also moved other items out previously from ARPA interest that were highway fund items and put them where they belong relating to the Kansas Highway Patrol. This project, I don't know, whether it's absolutely necessary or not. That's not what I'm speaking to now, but as far as the funding source, the substitute motion would be to fund from the State Highway Fund.
Do we have a second? Senator Cluse seconds. Discussion? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking at the green sheet, the House position is that there's $1 million of one-time repairs for the Salina Training Academy. So are we adding $1 million to that $1 million? Is that what we're doing?
Senator Claes. Senator Cluse.
No. We're just getting back to what we took out. Yeah, what the Senate took out. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Peck, did you get your question answered?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm guessing it was because I do know that we had deleted the ARPA interest money. And so if it's going to remain at $1 million, as is the House position, and just from the Senate position will be SGF versus ARPA relief funds, I think that's the way I understand it.
State highway funds.
State highway funds rather than from ARPA interest. So it's still the $1 million the House had.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Cluse, you're done?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Okay.
you.
And Senator Fagg? None? Okay. We're down to Senator Claes.
All right. I will try to make these quick. I've got a few of them. Some are technical in nature for the budget bill. We'll start out with the family residency programs. There are 2 family residency programs in the state, started by the state back in the 1970s. These provide rural doctors to our state. They have become quite popular. So just at one of them, there were 134 applicants for 2 spots. We have 2 spots available for them. 30 became finalists fighting for those 2 spots. These individuals do stay rural, and they do serve in Kansas in a rural area. This would expand the dollars that are being put in front of you. It's $1 million. These would expand the training rooms to add 2 students per year for the 3-year program, for a total of 6 students at any given time being added to the program in one of the locations. It would also be used in the other location to do something similar. And with that, I would move the proviso in front of you for KDHE Health for the rural community health centers with primary family medicine resident.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Cluse seconds. Discussion? Any questions on it? Senator Petty?
This is just a reminder. Was this part of whose budget was, whose presentation was this part of our budget? Was this part of, was it part of KDHE? Or?
Senator Claes?
Yeah, I don't believe so. We did something similar last year by adding rural residency slots, and then we also added to the program that supplements the tuition through KU Med in Wichita. So those items had been done in the past. This would now offer some assistance for the capital expenditure that would be necessary to have those students actually go through the program.
Other questions? Senator Petty?
Okay, so this is, you said, again, capital expenses. It's not actually increasing the funding that goes to those students while they're still in the program to help keep them in the program and keep them in Kansas.
Senator Cleese.
Correct. So we already did that largely last year. So those things are already in there.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Appears to pass. Senator Cleese.
I have one for, I didn't have this one typed up. So this we did last year as well. It's the 1.8 million for the Ready to Learn grant. We put in a grant for toiletries and hygiene products for students in K-12 schools. It's been very successful in the brief period of time it's actually been active. It appears our superintendents and school nurses appreciate this program and that it's having a positive impact on students. So I'm going to make a motion for the $1.8 million Ready to Learn grant to provide toiletries and hygiene products for students in K-12 schools through the Kansas Department of Education.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator Peterson. Questions and discussion. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does that count towards the Gannon law, that kind of thing?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not an attorney, but it's for students in K-12 schools. That's the appropriate source of funding for it, so that's where we have it.
Senator Petty.
And is this SGF?
Senator Clays.
Yes, it was last year as well. Yeah.
I just will add that, just a reminder that we took out 10.6 million maintenance of effort of programs including transportation to support Senate Bill 155 for vocational and technical programs, and then 16.5 from the 26. This 1.8, these are great resources, but we have ongoing programs that support educational endeavors within our schools that the Rose Standards says are important, and we aren't funding that.
Senator Clays.
Yeah, just one clarification, not in response to that, but just a clarification that this would also contain the proviso language from last year. So it does require a match. We're actually receiving $3.6 million in supplies to all of these schools that are requesting these. So wanted to add that in, that it will have the exact same requirements that last year's proviso has.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I recall correctly, we heard earlier today $5.9 billion being held by K-12 schools. This is nothing. They can easily fund toiletry items if they feel it necessary for their students. Again, I don't see it a function of government to buy hygiene items for children that have parents or guardians. So well, thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? I'm not sure on that one. Division, all in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It passes. Okay. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This next one is regarding the Kansas Supplemental U.S. History Program Act. It would allocate $2 million from the Department of Education for an RFP for online supplemental American history. Well, and I'll just wait for a second on that.
I have a motion. Do we have a second? Somebody want to second that? Senator Fagg. Discussion. Senator Colsher, I seen you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, your voice kind of trailed off there towards the end. I wrote down 2 million for supplemental American history, and then I'm not exactly sure what the rest of that was.
Sorry, the mics became directional this year for some reason. Yeah, it's an RFP for an online supplemental American history project. So we focused a lot on reading as we've gone through these programs, and that's obviously very worthy. This would, in this important time in our nation's history, add in a fact-based history program to learn the good, bad, the greatness of our nation through an online curriculum.
Senator Holster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was this vetted in a bill or anywhere else, or where did this come from?
Senator Clays.
I believe that this was simply requested to be considered by this committee today.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
And Senator, did you say this funding is coming from the State Department of Education?
Correct.
And
Senator Petty.
thank you. I'm sorry. And is this a sole source provider for this supplemental U.S. history program?
Senator Clays.
No, it is not. It would be an RFP that's issued, and it has some guardrails on it that also require an annual report to the legislature detailing the adoption, student engagement, the learning outcomes, et cetera.
Senator Petty.
And how would it be offered?
Senator Clays.
This particular curriculum is, I thought this was typed up, but I guess it's not. But it does have some guardrails on it also that require that it have history lessons, reporting tools, professional development for educators. I believe that it is all available as content that is delivered online.
Senator Petty.
I would just remind this committee that we have the opportunity for our secondary students to take college level courses, and history certainly could be one of those, whether it be American government or and that and it is available working with our community colleges and our regions. We did not fund the $2 million for blueprint for literacy, which we actually passed legislation for and we committed money to, and then this year we did not fund the $2 million. So, but we have said that reading is so important, and it is a performance measure that is evaluated on our state assessments. I would much rather see this $2 million going for the Blueprint for Literacy program.
Other questions? I don't know. Two of our senators stepped out for a minute. Senator Holscher.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a very valid point. I mean, we haven't thoroughly vetted this at all. It's very vague in terms of who would be using, what the reasoning is. And yeah, we have a Blueprint for Literacy program that has been passed via legislation that we should be funding, that has been vetted. So in light of that, I will make a substitute motion that I believe the amount was $2 million to be used to fund Blueprint for Literacy.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator Petty. Questions or discussion? Senator Petty.
I'll just remind you that this wasn't our budget. It was being paid for with ARPA interest funds. When those were stripped out, then there was no funding for it. So this certainly would be a way to fund it.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. No other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion fails. Any other questions for Senator Clays? Senator Erickson.
Not so much a question, Mr. Chair, but we did, just for the committee's knowledge, we did have a presentation on this in the Education Committee, so it has been looked at through that lens, and it's my understanding that no district would be mandated. This is a completely optional program. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions or seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion fails. No, motion carries, excuse me. I'm so used to, I'm joining Senator Peck. Yeah, I've heard that more today than anything, so. Senator Clays.
Usually not until the 8th or 9th one that I start losing. Let's move now to the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. We're going to do a $200,000 ARPA interest grant for the Cheney Lake Marina. As you might already be aware, the Cheney Lake docks have been on dry land for quite a bit of time, and this is essentially a amount of money that will stop that from going bankrupt and allow them to get the things set up in the water. And that's the motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Peterson seconds. Questions or discussion? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the state own that dock?
Senator Clays.
Yeah, no, no, ARPA traditionally has been used for things that are assisting those who are having trouble because of COVID or other reasons. So we, used it for, yeah, it's an omen. We've used it for things like this. We've used it for those who are in positions where their construction costs were inflated. We've used it for those who have had difficulties in their businesses because of COVID and those sorts of things. And this is similar in nature. I believe we also used it to fund some natural gas pipes and some things like that. So this wouldn't be out of bounds as far as a funding source for something like this. Now, if you had an objection to, getting this thing set up so that they don't all go bankrupt, then that's a different story. But that's the funding source.
Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify, and I understand, I'm a bit familiar with the situation, and it's really a bad deal, but I thought I heard, I don't know, 12 or 15 motions ago that we were out of ARPA interest money. And so was this already built into your calculation of where the ARPA balance stood, or does this need to come out of SGF?
Senator Clays.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because this doesn't exist in the House, we could certainly start to reconcile some of these, but there is a couple of different floating numbers on what ARPA interest is. Technically, if you go by the numbers that we have over here, the House overspent theirs by several $1 million. We would be overspending by 200,000, so it's probably not that big of a deal.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My heart wants to help this. My head says we don't. We start doing this this is a private business that's got a bad situation, and I'm sorry. But when the state goes in bailing this out, what other things do we bail out? And we've got to be consistent with how we do this. And I know in El Dorado, if I'm not mistaken, that marina went bankrupt 2 or 3 times. So just want to give you a little history, but that I know about.
Other questions? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think the motion carried. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for the Secretary of State's office. I'm going to make a motion to change the source of funds under the Secretary of State in FY25 for the modernization of state regulation making process by implementing an electronic regulation system from the Technology Communications Fee Fund to the ARPA interest funds if available, and if not, then SGF. Oh, thank you. And that is the motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Petty seconds it. Senator Clays, would you mind describing it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Technology Communications Fee Fund is funded by a very specific set of individuals who aren't necessarily responsible for this particular modernization project. This should be something that all taxpayers support, or, you know, ARPA interest supports, rather than this specific group of people who pay into this fee fund. So that is the rationale behind this change. I understand there's money in that account, but this shouldn't just be a cash grab where we decide that we see money in an account and decide those individuals should be responsible for paying for things that are to the benefit of everyone in the state. So I'm making the motion to move this over to ARPA, and if not, then SGF, which seems like great timing that I had this planned out to be an if not SGF, because we're now out of ARPA interest. So what fortunate writing.
Questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is this 1.5?
Senator Clays.
Yes, yeah, it's 1.5 million.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
Is this part of the HAVA election security? Well, that's, or is this in addition to, what is this 1.5 for?
Senator Clays.
So I believe the House has it in this way, and that's why, we're trying to change it. So the House decided to put this in for the electronic regulation system. So it's a new system that's going to bring things electronic that are currently done on paper and take a lot of man hours to deal with. But that's not necessarily the responsibility of those who pay into the Technology Communications Fee Fund. So that's why there's this change. I understand why the House did it. You know, nobody wants to spend SGF, but it doesn't reconcile with the fee fund payers to be the ones responsible for updating the technology that is actually happening for all Kansans under that regulation making process.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much is in that fee fund?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have the current number. I thought it was over $2 million, but let me see if somebody has that. Yep.
Senator Clays.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's 5.2 million is in that, and it is paid for by business owners. So those are the people who are paying that fee and then would suddenly be responsible for modernizing our entire regulatory system.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are those fee funds then used for? Who determines that, and what are they used for then?
Senator Clays.
Yeah, they're used for the technology that is in the office that is dealing with the business processes in the office.
Senator Erickson.
Would this modernization not fall under that arena? I know it's broader than that, but wouldn't that kind of fall under what the purpose of this would be, is to make those records electronic, and wouldn't that help the businesses?
Senator Clays.
Certainly would help the businesses, but it helps the entire state. So that's the rationale behind not using necessarily the fees that are paid by this small group of individuals for the benefit of everybody else.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while I understand and I appreciate that, I'm just, seems to me like 1.5 out of 5.2 for a purpose that does benefit the intention of that fee fund. I'm more comfortable with, if not ARPA, then the fee fund, but I'll leave that to the will of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Did you have anything else, Senator Clays?
A couple technical ones.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got one here. So the House did a 1.5% across the board cut to the agencies, and I would make a motion to do a 3% across the board with proviso language to allow agencies to determine where the reductions occur within their specific agency.
Motion seconded by Senator Peck. Discussion. Senator Petty.
This is a change to the 1.5 across the board cut to 3% across the board cut. We heard from agencies where it's much greater than a 1.5 and sometimes triple that, depending on the amount of funding they have that is SGF. So I'm very concerned about the impact this has on the services that DCF, KDHE, any of them can provide, or the Department of Corrections that they can provide.
Senator Clays, you have any comment?
No, it just
Any other questions? Senator Holscher?
The question is this, didn't we hear previously that the 1.5% cut has a bigger impact on certain agencies than others? And in light of that, I had to think the 3% cut would do even more damage to some of those agencies. I don't, yeah, we can't support this. I mean, we're already in a situation with some agencies with the initial proposal. And, you know, to be making these types of decisions kind of spur of the moment does not seem like a good, prudent idea. So I will not be supporting. Thank you.
Senator Clays?
I'd like to extol some of the virtues of my motion. First off, the House version does not allow the agencies to determine where those reductions occur. So instead of saying, 3% across the board or 1.5% across the board, ours actually allows them to determine where the reductions occur within their agency. So it does not force them into cutting a specific thing, 1.5% or 3%. It instead allows that proviso language. Also, because of the House rules, having a proviso in there at all allows us to edit perhaps their cut, and it also allows us to have a conversation about where that particular number falls. We are unlikely to accept on the first round the 1.5. They are unlikely to accept the 3. So we will certainly have a conversation about any cuts that might occur across the board and how those would be implemented, because this language is now, or will, should we pass it, be in our version of the bill. So that's the purpose behind it, and gives us a position going into conference that also contains a proviso that would be available to us to use. Without it, there is no proviso, and the 1.5 is in the bill.
If I may follow up.
Senator Holscher.
Thank you for that clarification, because that's actually a little different than what I initially heard. So I think that does make more sense, and then it gives those various agencies a little bit of that flexibility that they were needing. So thank you. That's why I asked that question. So I actually will support this. Thank you.
Senator Petty.
So, Senator, that then puts the, would you say that then puts the across the board cut between 1.5 and 3%?
Well, since I'm the chair now, I'll recognize myself. Based on the House rule, it actually caps at, I mean, I don't know how it works. This isn't an appropriation. So it's a reduction in the appropriation. So really, theirs is a $35.1 million decrease. Ours would be a $69.7 million decrease. So the higher number is actually their position. Ours would be the lower number of funding in this scenario. So the cap is their number. In their, if I'm reading that right, am I reading that wrong? I'm reading that wrong. So no,
I don't know how that works out that way, but go ahead.
the highest they can go on the funding. How do they treat negative numbers? We're going to get a lawyer to help us out. Find out how they treat a negative number. Okay, so just a little clarification because there's another little part of their rule. So because their position passed their chamber, it could also be accepted. So either can be accepted. Their limitation would simply be that they can't go higher in expenditure than the highest amount of expenditure.
Senator Petty.
So with this, so within the budget, we have a state employee pay plan that's 2.5% for wages, but then this would be taking away 3% overall from an agency's budget. Would that be correct?
Senator Clays.
Well, mine doesn't overall take it out of the agency's budget. It instead calculates a amount. And then that amount would be reduced. The agency can determine where that amount comes from. So it does not have to come from salaries and wages.
Senator Petty.
Okay, it adds flexibility, but it's still a 3% cut when within the bill, we have a pay plan that was 2.5%. So in fact, you can say it's not coming from wages, but it's still coming from the same pool. Would that be correct?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Depending on the agency and the budget and where the vast majority of their resources go, it just kind of depends on how that could be implemented by the agency.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. We're still not getting away from the issue of some agencies are much more heavily dependent on SGF than others, and that will increase the impact on them. I don't like this scenario, and also I don't see where, I mean, except for saying the flexibility language, where it puts us, I mean, it actually puts in a position of a much higher cut across the board. I'm going to make a substitute motion of 1% with the flexibility language.
I have a substitute motion, second by Senator Holscher. Senator Clays. Anyone have questions or discussion from the substitute? Senator Petty.
Well, if just as was brought up earlier by Senator Alley, if we are looking for a Senate position that is different from the House, I'm not certain how this, I mean, I think 1% speaks to it, and it puts it in a range that our agencies have already been looking at and trying to determine how that they can deal with that. If the issue is flexibility, then it is giving them flexibility, but then there also would be the potential that they would be looking at some sort of pay raise. Right now, we're basically diminishing any kind of a pay raise that would be coming to our employee base.
Is there a question?
I thought I was making a
Okay,
statement about
okay,
my motion.
Okay. Any more questions? Senator Holster.
Could the carrier of the substitute motion provide clarification? What was that number that you said?
Senator Petty.
1%.
Thank you. Yeah, this obviously still gives us the flexibility that is much needed, as was mentioned earlier, and gives us the framework in terms of in conference to have that range and that flexibility. So I will support this.
Other questions? Senator Clays.
Not a question, just a comment. This will mean that our budget will now spend more than $10 million more than the House budget on this item. So I just want to point that out.
Any other questions? Senator Petty.
Well, I mean, we haven't, whether it's this or any of the other 20-some provisos that have been offered this evening, haven't been saying, oh, this is putting us $1 million, $6 million, $5 million above the House. I don't know why we would be saying on this particular thing. We are providing a range for discussion when we go to conference, and the difference is that my suggestion is it should be between 1 and 1.5 as opposed to 1.5 to 3, and not negate what we have also in the budget when it comes to which would almost be false, a pay raise. So we could have put these where we're at with the House on every other item that we've addressed this evening, and we have not. This just, I think, provides a more reasonable range to be talking about if we are looking at an across-the-board cut.
Any other questions? Senator Holscher.
Okay, I'll be fast. I will just piggyback on that and say, very importantly, these are our employees that we're talking about of the state that are very dedicated and work hard for us in all of these different departments. These are important services that we're talking about when we're looking at this budget and potential cuts. So I appreciate the substitute motion, the fact that it still gives us a range to work with. And again, the flexibility that is needed in terms of these different departments and the nuances there. So I would encourage the committee to support. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion fails. Back on the motion, Senator Clays, you have any other additional comments? Any questions for Senator Clays? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Do you have any more? Senator Clays.
I know the hour's late. I'll be brief. Okay. On the items previously, when I stated 25, 26, and 27, I actually intended that for the previous proviso. We discovered that it wasn't necessarily on the one I was on. So the allow state treasurer to invest in the budget stabilization and capers, cap at $175 billion, and then transfer to SGF. That was a 25 proviso that I would also put in 26 and 27. So my motion would be the same proviso, but add to 26 and 27 as well.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator Peck. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Oops. Senator Petty.
just a clarification, so that's dealing with that, to invest into capers, the cap at 1.47 billion, authorizing the state treasurer to invest in capers at the interest earned transferred to SGO, is that it?
Senator Clays.
Correct. Yeah, I did that one for 1 year and then attempted to do the other one for 3, and it was supposed to be the other way around. So my bad.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Hold on.
You're done, okay. Anyone else have anything else? Seeing nothing? Okay, I'll recognize Senator Clays.
Not done with you yet. Mr. Chairman, I move that all adopted committee amendments be included. Recommend Senate substitute for substitute House Bill 2007. That staff be authorized to make any technical amendments and that Senate substitute for substitute House Bill 2007 be passed.
We have a motion, we have a second. Senator Pag seconds. Any questions or discussion? Senator Owens?
Mr. Chairman, I think there's one more proviso we need to add. One that somehow compensates the fine men and women who have stood behind us throughout this entire process and do absolute exemplary work. Very thankful. I was thinking of using some of that ARPA interest money to supplement their pay, but unfortunately it was all used. So, sorry guys, but thank you all for all that you do.
Yes, thank you, staff. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Oh, okay, excuse me, we have to do roll call. Nancy?
Alley. Clays.
Aye.
Erickson. Bag.
Aye.
Holscher. Cluse. Owens. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Billinger. Oh, sorry, you don't have to. It wasn't a.
Okay, the motion carries. With that, thank everyone. I appreciate your staying late today to finish so staff can get started with the printing. So we are adjourned. Thank you.